It's a successful day yesterday. Car moved under its own power, drove it sort of around the block. And now, before we go any further, I want to make sure that some things are tidied up and taken care of. You know, we had wiring all over the place for the air ride system. In fact, there still is here. So I want to go through, clean as much of this up as possible. We need to figure out where this brain's going to get mounted. So I'm actually just going through right now, disconnecting stuff, wrapping it up because there's some extreme lengths of wire and cabling. And I want to make sure that the airlines are all, you know, taken care of and everything else. Then we can finalize some of our dash wiring and be able to hopefully get the dash set into place once we know for sure all our wiring is in fact done and completed the way that we need it to be. And there is our dash sitting right there. So that's going to be pretty much it. Time lapse, maybe a little bit of me scratching my head, figuring out where all this stuff is going to go. And we'll get this buttoned up. Everything is hooked back up and relatively in place. I'm just running the Ride Tech calibration setup again, just because, well, things were disconnected, things were reconnected, and I accidentally pinched one of the airlines in the back when I wasn't being careful enough. I think this was like an old battery tender or something that was up in the rear, behind the rear quarter panel plastic, hiding up in there. So we took that out, and you can see everything is just sort of, it's tentatively in place. Okay, so things are much cleaner. I've actually got 12 volts switched ignition hooked up, and this is sort of the layout that we're gonna go with underneath the K-Design rear seat delete. Sorry for the noise of the compressor in the back, but that'll just sort of, ooh. There's some fun air ride stuff here. But yeah, so while that's doing its thing, like I said, everything is tentatively in place. And what that will allow Keith to do is get everything located, the rear seat delete, configured the way that we want, the rear sub, rear amp, everything else. All right, look at this. The rear's working much better here now that we don't have a pinch line, so that's good. So I was looking at the dash, and other than this being kind of tweaked here, I think they heated that up, and I don't know, he must have had like a racing, maybe a race wheel or something, so they kind of clearance that. But I was like, where's all the heating ducts or HVAC ducts? So I had to go to my back shed, dig some stuff out of the archives here, and we're almost cleaned up. You can see some of the dust here. I'll get rid of the rest of that, don't worry. But yeah, it's the little things like this that you don't account for in a project. You just kind of assume they're there, and luckily I have an abundance of parts to be able to put all that back together, because without that bolted behind the dash, well, we can't really put the dash in. Now over here you can see some of the stereo equipment that Chuck's bought, and I don't know if we'll be using this amp. Well, it's an amplifier installation kit. What amp does he have? I think there's an amp here somewhere. If not, or maybe he didn't have an amp. Well, no, if you bought an amp kit, he needs to have an amp. Anyways, there's the head unit. One thing that I want to get installed that is pretty key, literally, or keyless, is the Fox Locks keyless entry system here. And this guy, it's pretty cool. I've put this in my silver notch. I have not done a full video on it, but it's pretty straightforward and it works really well. It's plug and play, and I don't really need to talk about it. I'm just going to show you guys real time here. There we go. Okay, wires tapped. That should be it, guys. It should be that easy. Would you look at that? Lock. Doors locked. Doors locked. Okay. One unlock. Driver's side only. Passenger side is still unlocked. Hit unlock again. There's the passenger side. Hold your... And that is the sound of the hatch. And boom, that's it. Fox lock is installed. Alright guys, so I'm not going to go into details on the Fox lock stuff because I'm actually going to do a separate video on that, because after I posted up on Instagram my collection of Fox locks boxes, everyone's like, oh, are you going to do a video on that? Are you going to do a video? And I feel like it being buried in this video, it might not get the exposure that it deserves. So we will have a full video on that. Make sure you check that out. Plug and play simple though, easy peasy. And just like that, we can now move on to the stereo. Going through and creating the relevant harnessing. So this is the plug and play universal kits that you get that plug into your factory harness here. And then of course you got to do all the connections that go into your main head unit. And then I've got my remote out here, which is that blue wire. It's going to be running to the back, and then this is actually for the emergency brake, so that's why those two wires are out. And fun fact about a fox body, in case you guys didn't know, this main harness, see this big red wire right here? It's actually the ground, in case you guys didn't know. So I know a lot of people probably would assume, you know, you're trying to line up your stereo colors and, you know, yellow is your constant, red is your switched ignition. It's like, no, red is actually the ground. And funny enough, it lives on the dash frame down underneath here. And yep, big red wire, Ford. Way to go, making that a ground. Anyways, if you follow the colors on these harnesses, then you're not going to mess it up. But if you're trying to, again, match up color for color, you're going to see black, 3 wires in, 1, 2, 3, is going to the red. So there is your fun fact for the day. I'm going to get these guys plugged in. And even though I've got the ground, you know, connected through this harness, it's kind of a rinky-dink ground in there, so I've added sort of my own into the connection points that I did here. I'm going to attach that to the main ground under the dash as well. Can never have enough grounds, guys. Just like that. It was a late night last night, guys, and Chuck, I know you're watching the video, so you probably know what night it was that I'm referring to, but got quite a bit done. And it was just one of those things when you are, like, I guess just absolutely immersed in a task, you just don't want to stop, or you want to make sure that you get through it to reach a stopping point that you're happy with. And it was one of those ones where it's just, I've spoken about this before, sometimes I like challenge myself, where it's like, man, you don't get to have dinner until you finish that part of the job. And well, last night was definitely one of those nights. So we'll do a little bit of an update here, show you guys where I left off and where we're going to continue today. So you can see here on the spare tire well, we got speaker wires run that will be for all of our stereo stuff. We've got 3 sets of RCAs, front, rear, and sub run. We've got everything put into my famous Alex Tech split loom wrap You can see the disaster on the floor here of just everything that I've been routing and doing. So you can see everything is tucked up here nicely. And anything that I've run or have added to the car is in that loom. And I label everything. It's not labeled yet, but especially down on this side, I want to make sure that, you know, there's labels saying, you know, there's an airline hiding here, right? Because the airline is all tucked up against the rocker panel, and then the respective stuff zip tied up along with it. So that is taken care of. The wiring for the stereo is taken care of. All right, we obviously got everything mocked up into place there. And here's some of my labels, for instance, right? ECM ground, low oil. So ECM ground, actually I need to put on here because this is the main ground from the main harness now, where this is typically in your engine bay. Well, now it's here, so I'll make sure that all of this gets wired up and done. We got the Fox lock installed yesterday, and you see the main power wires on this side. I'm sure a lot of you stereo guys will know this. If you don't know it, then don't run your RCA cables next to your power wire, because ultimately the noise going through your charging system and the main power wire can impact the signal that's going through those RCA cables, bringing noise and distortion into the signal. And sometimes, you know, if you hear that notorious alternator whine at low volume, and you hear the "wing" as you're revving your engine, that could be a cause of it, or just poor grounds can be another cause of it. So again, you can never have enough grounds. So that is where all of that is at. We've got a lot of our interior pieces out and ready here. Got the 417 Fox AC or HVAC relocation kit for the double din. And I had the conversation with Chuck yesterday. I'm like, Chuck, you know, we need to cut your interior in order to put that in. So that was a little bit of a back and forth, because when you have interior that's this nice, it pains me to cut. Now, he did have a faceplate drilled here back in the day, right? So the faceplate's going to cover all of that up. So we're going to kind of be fixing one thing, you know, wrecking another. So in order to get that double din in, and actually, you know what? See how this double din is shaped? I have an idea, guys. I have an idea that I feel like is going to save us from having to cut this out. Okay, I don't think we're going to get away from cutting the lower section of the dash here. So, you guys haven't done this 417 Fox ordeal, then you know, typically you have to cut this right here. Okay, and that isn't structural by any means, like, I guess like a little bit, you know, along the bottom edge. But that's not a huge deal. The one that I don't like is cutting this part of the console out, because if you really wanted to, you could actually fix those holes and, you know, fix that, especially being this Minty. I've got an idea. With that said, all the HVAC stuff is put back onto the dash. If you remember, it was missing all those pieces, and you can see I've added additional self-tapping screws to hold all the vents in place. And why I do that is, number one, it will help create a better seal around the plastics, and number two, it keeps things from possibly vibrating or rattling more, because these things, they do actually, believe it or not, they move around back there, and there's nothing worse, you know, than the sound of plastic rattling. Mind you, a lot of that will be taken care of when it's bolted in place. I'll probably stick a couple pieces of kill mat on the tubes just to say I did. And even if you kind of go around the seams here, that'll help seal things off and get you more air where you want. So there's another little tip, if you will. But let me go ahead and deal with this. I think I have a solution for that. Okay guys, so step one, you can see what I've done on this side. And I'm actually going to go over and finish it on this side. So that way, let's see. I don't want to conclude what the outcome's going to be, but I feel like I might be onto something here. See what I did there? Now, if you guys have a double din head unit that is the full depth, you wouldn't be able to do this, but I guess this is sort of the advantage of a Sony. It's a single din behind this portion. So I have successfully cut and folded the tabs. I could have cut these off, but I figure it would add or keep some structure. In fact, if you really wanted to line up some holes on the bottom, you could really get it in there. Anyways, by design, the way that this kit works is the head unit gets mounted with spacers to where the factory climate controls are. So that's why it's not going all the way in, which is fine. Allowed us to keep this down here, right? But these spacers stick the head unit out to about here. We're gonna have more than enough room to clear this without butchering that lower section of the dash off. And then, more importantly, let's just mock this up. I'm going to go ahead and say that that was a win, and that you do not need to butcher or cut your pristine center console. Just like that, guys. Now the question is, if you really remove this or you sandwich this to exactly one din, you may not have to cut as much out as I did here, but I think now it just kind of gives you that extra little bit of room and flexibility and gives you the ability to kind of keep more material there. But guys, this does not, I feel, weaken anything. So 417 Fox, you might want to consider a little bit of a redesign here on these plates. And that way it's going to allow people to not have to cut. If you did this right and you recommended these Sony decks, I bet you wouldn't have to cut a thing. So I know a lot of these dashes are cracked here already. You know, people that don't know how to take these out properly, and they end up ripping and tearing and doing all the things. But there you guys go. One way to not have to cut up your Minty black center console, or any, you know. Not to say that red is any less or inferior to black, but just saying, when you got nice stuff, modify the aftermarket stuff instead of modifying your factory stuff, if you can get away with it, and we just proved it right here. What a sticky day today. So we are at the point now, almost, of being able to put the dash. I gotta take the head unit out that we mocked up there, but get the dash in the car before that happens. All right, just wanted to show you guys, here's the Fox lock. Okay, so got that piece of kill mat on the backside, keep things from vibrating or doing whatever, and it's just tie wrapped into place. That way there's accessibility and whatever. If something needs servicing there, it's still going to be a challenge if you need to get your hand up in there, but it is possible from the underside. We've all done it before because it's on that triangle bracket, which I've got all painted up and nice and clean in there. We've got the, what is that guy? That is the rear window defrost module. The low pressure oil pressure module is bolted on there properly. I did remove the wiper module. So in case you guys are wondering what those things are that are attached to this bracket, here's his old one that was cut, right? So that's for your wiper motors. We don't have wipers in this car, so that's not going back in. That's an extra low oil pressure sending unit. And the black one is your rear window defrost, for anybody that was curious on what those weird relays did underneath the steering column area there. So I'm just going to make sure that all my relevant wires that I need are available. Okay, and going to mock the dash in. I've got all this stuff kind of loose down here because of the relocation for the climate control. I want to make sure that there's enough harness, and you know, heater box, everything is good, guys. You want to really make sure that you haven't forgotten to plug something in. This guy usually always is forgotten about. So that's the one that will actually, if this is disconnected, you'll only get HVAC coming out of your defrost vents, and it won't work any of the other HVAC in the dash. So that's an important one. Make sure your hatch release, and this is the old airbag module, which is not plugged in anymore. There's another harness for airbag module stuff. That's all been removed. Little light for the glove box, all of those things. Make sure your speaker wire connectors, right? So just go through, do your checklist, make sure you got your HVAC main box bolted in properly. Make sure you put your insulation back in if you have it. And now I'm going to go, just before I put the dash in itself, I am going to put a couple pieces of kill mat on all of these mounting surfaces. The screws will go right through just to kind of give a little bit of dampening and anti-rattles. I'll put little pieces of kill mat on the sides here, and like I said, I'm going to do a couple pieces on the HVAC piping behind the dash as well. That was time-lapsed, but I do have a little bit of a procedure in terms of reinstalling a dash, especially one that's been out and the frame's been out, and opportunities for things to get a little tweaked, because those dash support frames, they're pretty flimsy. So once you get your dash positioned where it should be, and you got all your connectors and everything else out and you're ready to commit, I always do the top windshield ones first and make sure all those holes line up. And then I go to the sides of the dash here by the door posts, and you pull the weather strip back, and there's two little screws that 9 times out of 10 people don't put them back in. Once you get those ones in, it's actually gonna pretty much guide or have all of your holes, especially the ones underneath here. Guys, don't over tighten this stuff because the plastics are brittle this day and age, and I've seen chunks go missing. Actually, usually it's from people forgetting or not knowing where screws are, and they're like, oh, why isn't this coming out? And they just rip the damn thing out. So now that I've got the side ones in, the top ones in, the next crucial ones are the ones on the undersides here. Once those are in, everything else, like right there, and then underneath here, and everything should line up and go together real nice. Guys, this weather, Texas, I don't even know what to say. Bipolar weather is an understatement. However, we're making progress, getting down the insulation, sound deadening, whatever you want to call it, and you know, just kind of taking our time, measuring stuff out. You can see all my Sharpie marks. I can trim a few last things out and get the driver's side finished up, and then we'll be in a position to start looking at our carpet. Well, an hour later, nothing has really changed. More thunder. Got all our padding installed though, so happy with that. It's actually almost starting to look like a car again. So in order to do the 417 Fox mod, we do need to modify the climate controls here. So we need to shave these nipples off and then clearance the edges here. Drill these holes. Reason why I don't mind making holes in this console is because it already had holes to begin with. Test fit. So it looks pretty good. I think I'm gonna put some washers on here, make sure the pressure is equally distributed. All right, we are getting down to the final details. Seats are reinstalled and got the headlight switch just plugged in to make sure that all the lights and everything are working for the climate controls, which you can see them nice and bright from here. And head unit powering on, everything doing what it should. And I'm gonna have to tuck up the wiring underneath there And the console is probably going to have to come out again because I want to get the metal piece, the little U that bolts to the transmission tunnel, to keep everything nice and sturdy in there. And once we have that, guys, we're rocking. Like door sill plates, tucking the computer. Actually, you don't even need to tuck the computer out yet if we're gonna get it to Murillo's for tuning. But oh, what a journey, and a lot in the past little while, and good reason for that. Motor City Fox Fest is just under 2 months away at this point, but don't kid yourself, guys. I do not want another episode of the Shipbox Fox, right? Where I'm burning into Airbnb days and wasting money. This car still needs the stereo to be outfitted and the rear seat delete to be done. It still needs shakedown miles. It needs quick trick alignment in the front, waiting on the 7mm spacers, which I think came in today. Lots of just little tiny details, and the devil's in the details, and it can make or break a project. Just look at a lot of the vehicles that are at SEMA. They might look together, but if you start looking real close, they are not all together. So I am probably, just because there's been so much information in this video, I think I'm going to leave this video here, and we will do kind of a last wrap up ish, maybe it'll be themed sort of like this one, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, I do not know. But yeah, some long days, but amazing progress. I still need to get the door panels off, get the door speakers installed, figure out what rub the tint on this side, fix some map pocket sag, and a few other little things, but that's pretty easy. The rear plastics, I think, can actually go in at this point. Actually, I take that back. Seatbelts. Chuck, I need to call you today because we need the actual retractors, and I don't see them anywhere. All the buckles are here, but I don't see the actual belt retractors. So we'll have a conversation about that. But anyways, guys, till next time, we will see you back here on the Infamous Project.